On March 8, 1010, Persian poet Ferdowsi completed the Shahnameh, one of the longest epic poems in the world. This literary masterpiece, written in Persian, recounts the history of Greater Iran from its mythical beginnings to the Islamic conquest. On March 8, 1262, bourgeois militias from Strasbourg clashed with the army of the city's bishop in the Battle of Hauschbergen. The militias emerged victorious, marking a key moment in the struggle for Strasbourg's independence from the bishop's rule. On March 8, 1658, the Treaty of Roskilde was signed after Denmark-Norway's crushing defeat in the Northern Wars, 1655 to 1661. King Frederick III was forced to cede nearly half his territory to Sweden, reshaping Scandinavian geopolitics. On March 8, 1722, the once mighty Safavid Empire of Iran suffered a devastating defeat against an Afghan army at the Battle of Gulnabad. This battle paved the way for the eventual fall of the Safavid dynasty. On March 8, 1775, an anonymous article, believed by some to have been written by Thomas Paine, titled African Slavery in America, was published. This was the first written call for the emancipation of slaves and the abolition of slavery in the American colonies. On March 8, 1782, in Gnadenhutten, Ohio, Pennsylvania militiamen slaughtered 96 Christianized Native Americans. The massacre was retaliation for raids carried out by other tribes, despite the victims having no connection to the attacks. On March 8, 1801, during the War of the Second Coalition, British forces led by Sir Ralph Abercrombie landed in Egypt to drive out Napoleon's French forces. This marked the beginning of the end for France's Egyptian campaign. On March 8, 1844, Iceland's historic parliament, the Althing, was reopened after being closed for 45 years. This marked a step toward Iceland's eventual independence from Denmark. On March 8, 1868, in Sakai, Osaka, Japanese samurai killed 11 French sailors. The incident led to diplomatic tensions between France and Japan, highlighting the instability of the early Meiji Restoration period. On March 8, 1910, Raymond de la Roche, a French aviator, became the first woman in history to be awarded a pilot's license. Her achievement paved the way for women in aviation. On March 8, 1916, British forces attempted, but failed, to break the siege of Kut, modern-day Iraq. During World War I, this was a major setback for British and Indian troops fighting against the Ottoman Empire. On March 8, 1917, the United States Senate adopted the cloture rule, limiting filibusters for the first time. This change allowed for debate to be ended with a two-thirds majority vote, making it harder for senators to block legislation indefinitely. On March 8, 1936, the Daytona Beach and Road Course held its first ever oval stock car race. This event was a precursor to the creation of NASCAR, which later made Daytona Beach one of the most iconic racing locations in the world. On March 8, 1937, the Battle of Guadalajara began during the Spanish Civil War. The Republican forces, supported by the international brigades, successfully repelled an Italian-led offensive, marking a significant defeat for Francisco Franco's nationalists. On March 8, 1942, during World War II, the Dutch East Indies surrendered the island of Java to the Imperial Japanese Army. This marked the full Japanese occupation of the region, dealing a major blow to Allied control in Southeast Asia. Also, on March 8, 1942, Imperial Japanese Army forces captured Rangoon, the capital of British Burma. This was a critical loss for the British, as Rangoon was a major strategic port and supply hub for the Allies in the China-Burma-India theater. On March 8, 1950, Volkswagen began production of the Type 2 bus, one of the most recognizable vehicles in automotive history. The van became a symbol of the counterculture movement of the 1960s and remains an icon in the world of vintage cars. On March 8, 1962, a Turkish Airlines Fokker F-27 Friendship crashed into Mount Medetsiz in the Taurus Mountains, Turkey, killing all 11 people on board. This tragic accident added to the challenges of early aviation safety. On March 8, 1966, Nelson's Pillar, a famous monument in Dublin, Ireland, was destroyed by a bomb. The attack was believed to have been carried out by Irish Republicans, as the statue of British Admiral Horatio Nelson was seen as a symbol of British rule. On March 8, 1979, Philips publicly demonstrated the compact disc, CD, for the first time. This innovation would go on to revolutionize the music industry, replacing vinyl records and cassette tapes as the dominant format for decades. On March 8, 1979, NASA's Voyager 1 spacecraft captured images proving the existence of active volcanoes on Io, one of Jupiter's moons. This was the first time active volcanism had been observed beyond Earth. On March 8, 1983, U.S. President Ronald Reagan famously referred to the Soviet Union as an evil empire during a speech to the National Association of Evangelicals. This statement heightened tensions during the Cold War and became one of Reagan's most memorable quotes. On March 8, 2010, Total Nonstop Action TNA Wrestling moved its flagship program, TNA Impact, to Monday nights in an attempt to compete with WWE's Monday Night Raw. Despite a high-profile debut featuring Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, the move was unsuccessful, and TNA later returned to its original time slot. On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared while en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing with 239 passengers and crew on board. The fate of the flight remains one of the greatest aviation mysteries in history, as no confirmed wreckage was found for years.